This is Professor Jameson, and this lecture is on how to write a contract in California the easy way. I'm not a transactional lawyer myself. I generally was a litigator. But if I had to draft a contract, this is the way I would go about doing it. And if you're assigned a task like this, this is the way I suggest you go about doing it. All of you are in California, so I'm going to talk about how to do it in California under California law. There is a invaluable resource at your local law library, and that resource is the California Legal Forms. It's a form book on all kinds of contracts. And what a form book does is it gives you a little summary of the law, and then it gives you examples. And so if I was assigned a task to do something like that, what I would do is I'd head to the law library. For some of you out in the desert, I don't know if Barstow, the courthouse there, has a law library. I would imagine that they would. But I'm in Kern County, so this is how I would do it here. I would go down to the law library, if I was you, I would identify myself if you're working for a lawyer or if you're just a person, whatever. And you just ask the law librarian for California legal forms. Okay, and she'll take you over there, and there's an index, and you can look up the subject, and then you can read a little bit about the law and get the appropriate form. And you can do about that a couple of ways. One way is to go ahead and photocopy it. They have photocopiers there, and you can just go do that if it's a couple of pages or whatever. But if you're trying to draft something that is really long or complex, what I would do is ask the law librarian if they have access to LexisNexis. Okay, so this California Legal Forms is a Matthew Bender product, and they're not a Westlaw product. I don't have time to get into the feud between Westlaw and Lexis. But in any event, ask them if they have access to LexisNexis. And if you do, you could have access to California Legal Forms. If you've already gone to the shelf and looked at what you want, you'll even know the section number of the forms that you need to copy. And when you copy when you log on to LexisNexis and look up the forms that you need, you pull out this, a little USB. Boom. You put it in the computer and you download the form. Okay. If you work for a transactional lawyer, he's going to have access to California Legal Forms for sure. You know, he probably pays frankly a fairly expensive fee to do it because it's so easy to just download the forms and whatever you need. So that's the way I would go about handling a contract assignment in California. I'm not going to talk I apologize for the fact that like a lot of you didn't have chapter 12 on contracts. It just went right into pleadings in the 4th edition. I'm not going, like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on contracts themselves, other than that's the way I would go about doing it, using California Legal Forms. Federal, they probably have something similar, but you're going to have to dig a little deeper for federal. The last part of this lecture that I want to conclude with is the retainer agreements. Okay, your book, chapter 12 in the old edition that some of you have read, talks about retainer agreements. And what I've done is I have attached a couple of sample retainer agreements, real retainer agreements that I've used in the past. You know, and you can just take a look at them. Okay, there's generally two types of retainer agreements. Those are ones that are in the contingency fee, and those that are based upon an hourly rate. And I gave you examples of both. I'm not going to go through them, but you can look at those. I'm going to have a little assignment on those for extra credit, okay? If you want to go ahead and do that. If you don't, no big deal. And the main thing I want to tell you about retainer agreements is this. If you're working, particularly for a solo practitioner, if you do not need or should be the person who is going over the retainer agreement with the client. The attorney needs to do that. Okay, that was always my policy. When I had my client in, I met with them. I went over the retainer agreement, you know, paragraph by paragraph. It takes a few minutes, but it saves a lot of problems down the road. If you're routinely, you know, going over retainer agreements instead of him with the client, that's not a good thing, because you shouldn't even be explaining what it means. You might be getting into the area of practicing law without a license, I don't want to get into that. It's not that serious, but I'd be very concerned working for somebody who wasn't going over that. Now, if it's someone with an established relationship or more of a sophisticated business client, The attorney might have talked to him on the phone, and he's going to say, hey, so-and-so is going to come in and sign this retainer agreement. Those will usually be like an hourly rate thing. I wouldn't worry about that, because if they have some type of business relationship or something like that, then maybe not. I would still personally go over the retainer agreement with the client, but maybe I already did that over the phone. But if you're dealing with contingency and family law clients, I think really or personal injury, when I mean contingency, lost my train of thought there. Client needs to go over those with the attorney. That's the point I want to make. Okay. These are pretty common type retainer agreements. Okay. One is called the contingency, as I said. Normally, that's usually between 40%. If it goes to trial, 33%. If it settles, and if it's a minor, you can only take 25%. A lot of people think those are high. Trust me, that's what you really need to do to stay in business. Anything lower, you'd be making a bare bones because it's practicing law. So take a look at those if you want. I'll have a little written assignment for extra credit. I'm not going to give it to the whole class just because they didn't have access to this chapter. So that's all I'm going to say about the old chapter 12, which is writing contracts. If you have any questions on that, you can email me or post me. I'll be happy to reply. Later on today, I'll have up the chapter 7 or chapter 12 pleadings, beginning activities. We're going to spend a few weeks on those. I think it's really important. Not as important as writing contracts and things like that for reasons I don't want to get into now. Okay, have a great week, and I'll be posting another lecture on the pleading section soon.